أشرقت نفسي بنور من فؤادي حينما رددت يا رب العباد.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والعاقبة للمتقين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. So before I start, I just wanted to give you all just a little bit of a basic sort of reminder, and it's just good to constantly try and keep renewing our intention, and for us to keep trying to remember and be focused on why we're studying this and what is the benefit of it. So one of the signs of love towards someone is that you really want to know everything about them. So for example, if there's a celebrity that you follow or that you're really that you really admire, or someone who you really look up to, you usually want to know everything about them. Where they were born, how many people in their family, where did they study, what did they do, that's why you've got something like Wikipedia, right? Because people like to look up, the names or the people that they admire or idolize. And so, there is nobody, better than Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who has walked the face of this earth. And so this is really the person who we should really be eager to find out everything that we can about him. And we should be really eager to know as many details about his life as possible. When there was this whole, you could say, scandal, dispute with the cartoons of the Prophet ﷺ, starting off in Denmark and then happening in France again, and all of this kind of this fitna that took place. And a lot of people at that time, in defense of the Prophet ﷺ, they were saying that if these people knew the Prophet ﷺ, or they knew about his life, or they knew who the Prophet ﷺ really was as a person, so they were saying that these people, they would never make such cartoons about him if they really knew, if they truly knew who the Prophet ﷺ was and what kind of person he was. And that makes you think sometimes that although we are saying that they should know who the Prophet ﷺ is so that they don't mock him and they don't dishonor him, but we need to ask ourselves that how much do we know about him? How much do we know about his life? If we were to defend him or we were to stand up for him, what information would we be able to give somebody about him? For example, one of their main points of attack for the Prophet ﷺ is his marriage to Aisha radiallahu anha. And for my Seerah students who have been studying Seerah with me, we covered this in a lot of detail. The hikmah behind his marriage to Aisha radiallahu anha, and how she basically, it's almost like, her tarbiyah was done by him, and it's almost like she attended university with him, because she marries him and she moves in with him at the age of 6, and then she lives with him all the way until the age of 18, which is, when he passes away, she's about 18. And if you think about it, that's the age that a person attends school, right? You start at 6 and you come out at 18, and then you start university. And you can see that, this is the time that she is under his instruction. She studies, she learns from him, and then she's able to bring that sea of knowledge over to us, and we're able to learn from it. So, this is just one of the points that I'm giving you, but I'm just saying that, unfortunately, we know so little about the Prophet ﷺ that if we were to, defend him or stand up for him, we would struggle to some extent because, we lack so much knowledge about him. And so it's really, really important that we study the Seerah repeatedly. So, right now we're trying to complete the Seerah, inshallah. But the scholars have said that, every couple of years you should study Seerah again. It's that important. And again, through the Seerah, through studying the Seerah, you also learn about different Sahaba. You learn about their lives, you learn about their names, their lineage, any important events during their life. Again, this is an area where we really, really lack knowledge. We find it difficult to remember their names. We find it difficult to remember any details about them. And it's so important that, these people, they are, according to the Prophet ﷺ, the best generation. So how eager should we be to learn about these people who belong to the best generation? And how eager should we be to, learn about their life, about their background, about what it was they did to earn this title, to earn this honor of being amongst, the best of people, or the best generation. And, again, if you, for example, were to ask a group of children or teenagers or even, adults to name, for example, all the wives of the Prophet ﷺ, or to name the 10 Sahaba promised Jannah, or to name, for example, the people who attended Badr. I'm just giving you, different examples. People will struggle to come up with all these names, right? But if you were to ask them, especially the youth, if you were to ask them about names of football players in a certain team, or cricket players in a certain team, they will rattle off their names like this, even though these, some of these names are foreign names. We're not accustomed to these kind of names or pronunciations, but we will still know them really well because, this is where we are putting all our effort and all our time, is to study and, master the things connected to our dunya. And we have neglected a lot of information which is connected to our akhirah. And so alhamdulillah, Allah has been very kind to us that, He has guided us to be able to, study the Seerah and, for us to make time and attend this. This is a blessing from Allah, and it's I would say it's like a gift from Allah that, He has given us this opportunity and this interest and this keenness to study this. Because, like I said, there are many people who'd rather spend this time doing something else. So it's a blessing from Allah that, He has apportioned this risk for us, the knowledge of the Seerah of the Prophet ﷺ. And, we should be very grateful to Him for that. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us amongst those, who are surrounded by His angels and covered by His rahmah, and those who are mentioned by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala amongst those who are in Allah's presence, who are the angels. So these are some of the benefits of, of a gathering like this, where, we remember Allah, or we mention Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us amongst those. Okay. So going back to talking about the Battle of Badr, can somebody please remind me where we stopped last time? Can somebody remind me what is the last thing I spoke about with regards to Badr? Because today I wanted to sort of summarize just briefly the sort of like the prelude to Badr, coming into Badr, but I just wanted somebody to remind me where we stopped last time, because I have some idea, but I wasn't sure if I had actually mentioned those incidents to you, or if I was due to mention them to you. So if anybody remembers, can you either write it in the chat box or unmute your mic and tell me? Does anybody remember what's the last thing we spoke about? Okay. All right, I'm just going to start summarizing Badr, because I've been giving you a lot of like individual facts, so I want to try and just sort of like bring all the facts together and almost like narrate it to you like a story, so that you remember it and you're never going to forget it, inshallah. Okay, so the main cause for the Battle of Badr, which, as you know, was not meant to be a battle, right? It was meant to be the raid of a caravan. So the main purpose that this even happened, or this situation even arose, was because of the situation of the Prophet ﷺ with the Quraysh. So we know that for 13 years, the Quraysh were oppressing and harming the Muslims as much as they could in Mecca. And then eventually the Muslims, they try and get out of Mecca and they try and leave and migrate to Medina. And that is where the Prophet ﷺ, forms his first base, or you could say the first Islamic base. And the first Islamic community, you could say, is sort of like given birth in Medina. And you see that many doors are shut on the Prophet ﷺ, because remember, he tried in Mecca for 13 years. He tried to do dawah and it was just going nowhere. It was very, very difficult. Very few people were actually embracing Islam. Then he tried Taif, and Taif was another disappointment. And then he kept looking, he kept trying. So you see, every time he tries to open a door and it shuts on him, he tries to open another door, then another door, then another door. So he doesn't stop, he doesn't give up. He keeps trying and he keeps trying and he keeps carrying on. And that is what our attitude as a believer should be. We shouldn't give up very quickly and very easily. So if we really want to achieve something, we need to keep trying, we need to keep going until one of the doors stays open. And so this is what happens with the Prophet ﷺ. He eventually finds an opening in Medina, and that's where he goes, and he you could say he sets up his base, or that's where the first Islamic community is set up. Some of the events that happen very quickly within the first 6 months of him coming into Medina are some major events. So there's the changing of the Qibla. There is the revelation of the Adhan. So the Adhan is introduced. The Salah is, you could say, perfected, and it is instructed on exactly how to do it. The Salah is ordained during the Mi'raj in Mecca, but once he comes to Medina, then it's you could say that the Salah is organized. They are instructed how many rakahs to pray in every Salah, etc. The obligation of the fast of Muharram happens during this time, and later in the year, the obligation of Ramadan comes down, and so the fast of Muharram is made a sunnah fast and Ramadan is obligatory. Then there's the obligation of zakat. So all these ahkam, they're coming bang, 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 like consecutively. And this is all happening within the first 6 months. And remember, in Mecca, that was the time to strengthen their iman, and that was the time to work on their aqidah, their belief, the foundations of their belief. In Medina, now that their belief is in its place, now they are getting instructions and laws and ahkam and different kinds of rulings as to how to, live their life. And once the Prophet ﷺ formulates contracts and, he has a constitution in place with all the different people living in Medina. So remember we said that at that time there was the Muslims, then there was the pagans in Medina, because everybody had not accepted Islam, but most people had accepted Islam. But there were still some pagans. And then there was the Jews. At this stage, there was no munafiqeen in Medina. Muslims, non-Muslims, and Jews. And the munafiqeen, they turn up after Badr. And you will see why they turn up after Badr. I mentioned this previously, but I want to see if any of you remember. What is the reason that the Prophet ﷺ starts sending out saraya and ghazawat? What is the reason that, he starts sending out these little armies, you could say? So again, you can either write in the chat box or you can mute your mic.
To establish the
Okay, so yes, it is to make their presence known and get this message out. Anything else? Anyone else?
To protect the Muslim community as well.
Yes, so the way they're protecting the Muslim community is by sending saraya. He's making his presence known. He's making it known that the Muslims are not just sitting ducks. That just because they ran out of Makkah and came to Medina, people shouldn't start thinking that the Muslims are cowards and that they can't do anything. They've just run and they've escaped and they're just hiding. He wants people to know that the Muslims are brave, they have courage, they have a presence, they have a deen, they have a system. So he's establishing the Muslims, and one of the ways of establishing them is to, send out these expeditions for people to know that that this is a new community which has come up, and it is a community which is known. Very good. Somebody said to expand the boundaries. Excellent. So that is done through making new bonds, new ties, new contracts with different tribes, with different clans. So as you send expeditions out, you meet new people and you make new contracts and you get new allies. And so this way you expand the boundaries and you expand the strength of the Muslim base or the Muslim army. So these are some of the reasons why this is happening. And as you know, we mentioned that the stage of jihad that the Muslims are at right now is they are only allowed to fight against the Quraysh, and that is what they are doing at this stage. So their problem or their issue or their antagonism is only with the Quraysh, not with anyone else. And so the Quraysh, who have been oppressing them in Makkah for 13 years and who have now taken possession of all the wealth of the Muhajirun, because when the Muhajirun left, they obviously just take a few things that are on their back and they just ran, they've just tried to get out of Makkah as soon as possible. They've had to leave a lot of their stuff behind, and now the Quraysh have sort of taken over that as well. So there are all these kind of reasons that are causing friction between Makkah and Medina now. Okay. Between the Quraysh and the Muslims. And there were problems between Makkah and Medina as well. But, that's an additional thing. Okay. Initially, when the Prophet ﷺ has been sending out saraya and ghazawat, have any of them been successful? Have any of them ended up in any fighting or any bounty or booty? Anyone remember anything? Okay, so many saraya have been sent until now, but there has not been any fighting or any possession of any booty or anything like that so far, until the second year of Hijrah, when the Prophet ﷺ sends Sariyat Abdullah bin Jahsh. And if you remember, it was called Sariyat al-Nakhla, and he gave them a letter. He sent them very close to Taif, and he said, when you get there, then open the letter. And then when they opened it, they were asked to go to a place very close to Makkah, where they ambushed a caravan, and they took 2 prisoners. They killed one of the guards, and they took all the property that was on the caravan, and they brought it back to Medina. And then if you remember, there was a big scandal, and then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed ayat regarding the objection that everybody took on this Sariyah. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that yes, fighting in the forbidden months is bad, it is haram, but fighting and killing in the Baytullah, in the haram, is even worse. In front of the Kaaba, it's even worse than what these people are doing. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put this objection in its place and in perspective. And Allah is telling them that the Quraysh are objecting to these people having fought in a sacred month. But look at what the Quraysh have been doing every single day almost for the last 13 years. They have been oppressing, persecuting, and killing people in Makkah in front of the Kaaba, right? They have been doing heinous crimes in the haram, where nobody is meant to be harmed. I mean, all these muhajirun who were oppressed in Makkah, they were oppressed while they're in Makkah, while they're in the haram, right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is putting this objection in its place that, yes, okay, you should not fight in the sacred months, but what have these people been doing in the sacred, land, or in the sacred area of the haram? So based on that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has almost like given permission to the Prophet ﷺ that fight them throughout the year. Even in the forbidden months, you're allowed to defend yourself or fight them, because this is what they are doing, and what they are doing is worse. Okay, so this was the Sariyatul Nakhla. Next, what happens is, now we come to, you could say, the prelude of Badr. Okay, so now we've sort of established the scene that basically there is friction between the Muslims and the Quraysh. There's a lot of anger, there's a lot of resentment on the side of the Muslims against the Quraysh. Because like I said, they know that the Quraysh have taken possession of their property, they have taken possession of their belongings, and they're refusing to return them to them. So these are all things that the Muslims are very bitter and resentful about. And so in the second year of Hijrah, the Prophet ﷺ hears of a huge caravan that is coming from Makkah, and it is going towards Sham, and it contains a large amount of possessions belonging not only to the Quraysh but also belonging to the Muhajirun, and they've taken their possession and they're trading them and doing business with the possession that they have taken over. And so the Prophet ﷺ immediately gathers about 200 men, and he leaves Medina with whoever is available to go and ambush this caravan. By the time he gets to the place where this caravan was, the caravan has already left, and the Prophet ﷺ and the Sahaba arrive there, and they find out that they've just missed the caravan. What was this ghazwa called? When this caravan is on its way up to Sham, this expedition, what was it called? Anybody remember? So you guys are going to have to start remembering names of Sahaba, names of battles, names of ghazawat. At least some of the saraya, which are like well known. But this ghazwa, I expect you to remember the name. At least some name, at least some information about what this expedition was called. Anyone? Okay, so this was called Ghazwat al-Ashira. Okay, so the caravan on its way up to Sham is missed by the Muslims. And that expedition where they go to the place of the caravan and they miss it and then they go back, this expedition was called Ghazwat al-Ashira. Okay, so remember it for next time. Now, they returned with no fighting, no booty, because they've missed the caravan. So the Prophet ﷺ, he called Talha ibn Ubaidullah and Sa'id ibn Zayd, and he told them to sit in Hawra. Hawra was a place en route between Sham and Mecca. So he places them in a place where he knows that the caravan must pass through this area to go towards Mecca. And this is part of the reconnaissance that he sets up. So he tells them that if you hear any news, if you know of any information about this caravan coming close, when it starts nearing, you inform us that the caravan is coming close, and we will be here. And so as expected, the caravan returns from Sham, and it is loaded with the trade that they have just completed. And this caravan had 40 guards and 1,000 camels. Okay, it had 40 guards and 1,000 camels. And when the Prophet ﷺ gets news that this caravan is now nearing this route near Medina, he immediately mobilizes an army, and he just gets the people who are the nearest to where he is to leave, and anyone who's for example whose riding animal is far, or his provision is a bit of a distance, he leaves them behind, because he doesn't have time. He wants to catch this caravan. He doesn't want to miss it again, and so he rushes. And I will tell you later the numbers of people in this battalion that he has got together. Now, just a few days or weeks before the caravan was returning, that they had gone for Ghazwat al-Ashira, where they were unsuccessful. And so now, when they gathered again to go and look for this caravan, some of the Sahaba, they just go very casually, because they just think that last time there wasn't any fight or any capturing of any booty, and so they just think this time as well it might turn out to be nothing. So they just grab whatever is nearby, and then they just go with the Prophet ﷺ towards Badr. And the reason they're so keen to catch this particular caravan is the biggest caravan that goes during the year. So the other caravans are much smaller than this one. This is the biggest one. And like I said, almost every household has got some form of property on this caravan. So it's like almost every household in Mecca is participating in this caravan. And like I said, capturing this caravan will have many multiple benefits: economic, social, political, etc. So it is very crucial that they try and catch this caravan. And the Prophet ﷺ leaves Medina with 317 fighters, And since there is going to be no leadership in Medina while these people are gone, he appoints Ibn Maktoum. If you remember, he is the blind man who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about in Abasa wa Tawalla. So Ibn Maktoum is designated as being the Imam. So he has to lead everybody in Salah. And Abu Lubaba is left as the Amir of Medina. Okay, so he's like the proxy leader, you could say, or the substitute leader while the actual leader is away. That is the Prophet ﷺ. And the Prophet ﷺ, he gives the Liwa al-Am, which is the main flag of this, battalion, which is white in color. He gives it to Mus'ab ibn Umair. Okay, and he gives he appoints Ali radiallahu anhu as the leader of the Muhajirun or the Muhajirin, and he appoints Ali radiallahu anhu as the leader of the Muhajirun, and Sa'd bin Mu'adh is the leader of the Ansar. And there are 231 Ansar, 86 Muhajirin from those 317 fighters. And then in terms of animals, they have 2 horses and 70 camels. So if there are 70 camels and about over 300 people, it's almost 3 people to each camel. So they don't have surplus resources. And the Prophet ﷺ, he's offered by the people to have his own camel so that he can constantly ride. Because when you have 3 people sharing a camel, you will have 1 riding and 2 walking. And then they keep taking turns. So they tell the Prophet ﷺ that, we would like you to have your own camel so that, you don't have to walk at all. And he says to them that, do you have extra strength than me? And, he says that, we all need to do this together. And he says that I am also in need of ajr, just like you. So he insists and he shares the camel with 2 other people who are Ibn Abi Martad and Ali radiallahu anhu. And the camels in those days, they had this tradition of putting bells around the camel's neck. And he ordered all the bells to be removed and cut off from the camels because he didn't want anyone to hear or find out that they are approaching. And there's 317 of them, right? So this battalion is going to move slowly. With so many people, you can't race from one end to the other, right? Because there's a large number of people. So because they're all going very slowly, he appoints 2 people to sit, on camelback, to take their camels and to race ahead, to try and gather information and bring it back to the Prophet ﷺ. So these 2 people that he appoints are try and remember these names, sisters. Basbasa ibn Amr and Ma'di ibn Abi az-Zaqta. Okay, and these are the 2 people who are sent ahead to find the location of the caravan. And because remember, the Prophet ﷺ is heading towards the area where he thinks the caravan is going to pass through. But right now, he does not really know where the caravan is located, at this point in time. And if you remember, I think I narrated a story to you last time about the Prophet ﷺ going with with one of the Sahaba and speaking to an old Bedouin man and asking him, where are the armies settled of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and of the Quraysh. And if you remember, he said to them, why are you asking me about both of them? And he asked them who they were, and they said that, we will tell you who we are once you tell us where these people are located. And so he gave them an accurate location of the Muslims, and then he gave them the location of the Quraysh. And because he accurately gave them the location of the Muslims, the Prophet ﷺ knew that he is telling the truth. So they were confident that the location he is giving of the Quraysh is going to be accurate. And then when they had got this information from him, he asked them that, where are you from? And they said, we are from water. Does anybody remember that did I mention the story last time? Or does this sound something new? Yes, I did. Okay, good. So, okay. So the Prophet ﷺ is still trying to establish the location of this caravan, and this is, one of the stories that I mentioned to you. Did I mention to you the incident of where they find a servant belonging to the army of the Quraysh, and they catch him and they beat him up because they keep asking him, where is Abu Sufyan? And he keeps saying, I don't know where Abu Sufyan is. Did I mention that story? Yes, that's right. And I mentioned that the Prophet ﷺ was trying to establish how many people are in this army, because he hears about this army but he has no idea. And so he asks that servant that they caught and they were beating him up because they were asking him where Abu Sufyan is, and he kept saying, I don't know where Abu Sufyan is. He said, I know where Abu Jahl is, I know where Umayyah bin Khalaf is, I know where Utbah bin Rabi'ah is, but I don't know where Abu Sufyan is. And when they would beat him up, he would say, okay, I'll tell you where Abu Sufyan is. When they would stop beating him up, he would say, I don't know where Abu Sufyan is. And the Prophet ﷺ, he finished his salah and he came to them and he said to them that when he tells the truth, you beat him up. And when he lies, you stop beating him. So the Prophet ﷺ said, this is not the way to extract information from him. And so then the Prophet ﷺ spoke to him and he asked him. And the man said, I don't know where Abu Sufyan is, because Abu Sufyan is with the caravan. And as you will, as I summarize the story, you will see that the caravan is separate and the army is separate. And this is where the whole, you could say, it's almost like almost like a dichotomy that occurs during this incident. And so then the Prophet ﷺ, he asks the servant that, okay, because he's with the army of the Quraysh. So now the Prophet ﷺ is trying to get information about the army, not the caravan, because he knows this man does not know about the caravan. The caravan is being led by Abu Sufyan. So he asks him that how many people are there in this army, because he's trying to establish and get an idea of, how many people are we here to fight. And so he says, there's many people. He doesn't know the number. He's a servant. He's a simple guy. And so the Prophet ﷺ, he's very, the Prophet ﷺ has a lot of insight. So he asks him, how many camels do they slaughter every day? And then he says, that on the first day they slaughtered 10, and on the next day they slaughtered 9. And so the Prophet ﷺ said that al-qawm bayna tis'amiya wa bayna 950 wa alf, or bayna, something like that. So he said that the army, or this, these people, they are between 950 to 1,000. And he was very accurate in his approximation of that. Anyway, going back to the story. So Basbasa and Madi ibn Abi Zaqda, they go ahead and they try and find out where the caravan is. Now, in the meantime, the Prophet ﷺ is continuing with his 317 people towards Badr, but he has sent these two people ahead. If they gather any information, they should come back and tell him. In the meantime, Abu Sufyan, he is on his way down from Sham, coming towards obviously he wants to go from Sham to Makkah, but to go from Sham to Makkah he has to pass through the route of Medina. So he comes down, and as he is traveling towards Makkah, he keeps stopping and asking around. He keeps stopping and asking around. And what does he ask around? He keeps stopping and asking that, has anybody, seen anyone? Are there any people from Medina anywhere here? Is there any activity that is going on that he should know about? So he keeps inquiring because he's a very smart man, and he knows that if they try to ambush the caravan on our way up, they are going to try it again on our way down. Okay? Okay, so he knows that just like they tried to ambush us on the way up, they are going to try and catch us again on our way down. So that's why he's very cautious, and he keeps stopping and asking and doing a bit of reconnaissance, and he keeps, as he finds out there's nothing, he keeps moving down until he gets very close to Medina, and then he stops the caravan. He completely, you could say, pauses the journey. And what he does is he comes out himself and he starts walking around and, sort of like patrolling the area to find out what is going on in this area before he brings the whole caravan down. So he parks them in a place near Medina, and then he starts, patrolling. And as he's doing that, he reaches Badr. Now, Badr is an area where there are a number of wells, and obviously when there are wells, there will be shepherds because they will come to water their animals. And so he goes to this group of shepherds, and he asks them, he said, exchanges salam, exchanges greetings with them. And then he starts just like talking to them, how are you guys? Hope you're all well. And then he starts asking them that, have you noticed anything strange? Have you noticed anything different in the area? And they say, we're just regular shepherds, we don't know what you're talking about. We haven't seen anything. So he says that, look, anything, have you seen anything that is odd or different or new? So they say nothing much really. They say except that there were two riders. They came, they filled up their water bags from the well, and then they left. So Abu Sufyan says to them that, did they have camels? So they said, yes, they did. So he asks them that, where are their camels parked now? So they point to the direction where the camels are parked, and Abu Sufyan goes there towards the camels, and he finds some camel dung on the floor, and he picks it up and he opens it, and he finds dates in this dung. And he knows that these camels have come from Medina, because Medina was known to have surplus dates, and so they would feed the dates which were being wasted or not used, they would feed those to the camel. So he knows that these camels are from Medina. And then he asks the shepherds that, these men, were they armed? And so the shepherds said no. They said they were not armed. They just had a couple of swords, as in each one of them had a sword. And Abu Sufyan says that, this is an army. So these are not just regular people. They're going around with their swords. And so he rushes back to where he has stopped the caravan, and he has two options now. One is to take a different route so that he doesn't have to go through this area where, there are people from Medina waiting to ambush them. The other option he has is to alert the people in Mecca and try and get help from there to fight any opposition he gets on the way down to Mecca. So, do you remember the name of the man that he selects to go to Mecca? To carry the news? It's an easy name. Yes, very good. So someone just mentioned his name is Damdam ibn Amr al-Ghifari. Yeah, Damdam ibn Amr al-Ghifari. And what does Damdam do? Anybody remember? So he says to Damdam that go as fast as you can to Mecca. You don't waste any time. What does Damdam do when he arrives in Mecca? Yes, very good. So he rips his clothes up and he becomes naked. Okay? To catch people's attention. And he cuts the camel's nose. So you have this camel who's probably screaming in pain, and you have this man who's ripped up his clothes and he's standing there naked. So everyone is bound to look in that direction. There's no way that you are going to escape this kind of, he's not going to escape attention. And that was his purpose. He's arrived and he needs to pass this news on quickly. Before we talk about Damdam, what was the thing that was going on in Mecca before Damdam arrives? And Damdam basically confirms what was going on in Mecca before he arrives. Anyone? So the aunt... Yeah, okay. The aunt of the Prophet ﷺ, called Atika, she had a dream. And she told this dream to Abbas. And Abbas said to her, he said, don't tell anybody your dream. And what was her dream? In her dream, she saw that a rider on a camel comes into Medina, and he starts screaming and saying, oh people, save yourselves. You are going to be destroyed in 3 days. And then he goes on top of the Kaaba and he starts saying the same thing. He says, save yourselves, you're going to be killed in 3 days. Then he comes off the Kaaba and he goes on top of a mountain. The current position of that mountain is where the royal palace is now. In Makkah there is an area where there's the king's palace. So that mountain is known as Jabal Abi Qubais. Okay, so then he gets on to Jabal Abi Qubais and he says the same warning, and then he throws down a stone. This stone, it rolls down the mountain, and when it reaches the base of the mountain, it explodes, and the you could say like the little stones from this rock go into every household in Makkah. So she tells him the dream, and he tells her that this is a very important dream, don't tell this to anybody. So she says, I'm not going to tell anyone. But Abbas, he goes and he tells his friend Utbah. So he says, Utbah bin Rabia, he tells him, that, Atika had this dream. Utbah goes and tells his son Walid. And so this incident happens before Fajr. So not even an hour has passed. and Abbas radiallahu anhu, Abbas, who was not Muslim at that time, he comes to the Kaaba about an hour or a little bit over an hour later, after he has heard the news, the dream from Atika. And he comes and he starts doing tawaf. And as he's doing tawaf, Abu Jahl, he's sitting in his, his little club. They had like a, you could say like a coffee shop kind of thing. It's called a nadi near the Kaaba. And he calls out to Abbas and he says, come here. And Abbas radiallahu anhu says that, I've come here to do tawaf. So they say, okay, when you finish, come to us. So when he finishes and he comes to them, they say that, oh, you've got a prophet now. Have you got a prophetess as well? And he's just mocking them. And he says that if in 3 days this dream does not come to pass. So you can see within an hour, this dream has gone everywhere in Makkah. So remember, whenever you have a secret, if you can't keep it, don't expect anyone to keep it. The day you tell this secret to one other person, it's not a secret anymore, because it is going to travel. It is going to do its rounds. Anyway, Abu Jahl says to him that if in 3 days nothing happens, he says, we will put a poster inside the Kaaba saying that the house of Banu Hashim is the biggest liar in Arabia or in Makkah, something like that. And so, this is obviously something to humiliate them and embarrass them. And so he on the third day, Abbas radiallahu anhu, he puts on his fighting clothes, he gets his sword, and he goes towards the Kaaba, because he knows he's going to have to fight them, because they're going to humiliate and insult his family. So he's ready for a fight. And he says, as I went there, Abu Jahl just turned around and just went away. And he said, I'm really confused that, I thought we're going to have like a fight. We're going to fight it out, because today's the third day and they're waiting for something to happen. And why has Abu Jahl gone out? Because Damdam has just arrived, and Abu Jahl has, just got the news that Damdam has arrived, and he's made this huge scene. And Abbas is still not aware of that. And so when they find out that there's a problem, and Damdam is basically saying, rescue your caravan. All your wealth is going to be taken by Muhammad and his followers, and nothing is going to reach you. So they know that they need to get an army together quickly to try and go and defend their wealth and their caravan. And so Abu Jahl is the main mastermind behind gathering everyone. For example, Umayyah bin Khalaf, he didn't want to go. He was reluctant. He didn't want to die. He didn't want to fight. But Abu Jahl, he incites him, and he burns some bukhur, and he says, here you go, why don't you fragrance yourself, because you're a woman. And so Umayyah bin Khalaf, he says, throws the bukhur burner away, and he gets ready to fight. And it's almost like, their death is calling them. Abu Jahl is killed in Badr. Umayyah bin Khalaf is killed in Badr. His son Safwan stays behind, so he's safe. Abu Lahab, he finances somebody to go on his behalf. He's unwell, and so he's not able to go to Badr. Anyway, and so then they get this army together, and when they are a little distance away from Badr, they get news that from Abu Sufyan, because Abu Sufyan doesn't know that did something happen to Damdam, did he arrive, did he manage to pass on the news? He has no idea. And so Abu Sufyan sends another messenger to the Quraysh to tell them that there's no need to come anymore, because I have taken the caravan through another route, and your caravan is safe, your wealth is safe, and we have dodged the Muslims, and you guys can go back. There's no need to fight. There's no need for this army anymore. Abu Jahl says, no way. He says, we're not going back. We are going to go. We're going to camp at Badr for 3 days and 3 nights. We are going to eat and drink and dance and make our presence known, so that the whole of Arabia knows not to mess with the Quraysh, and the Muslims will never think of doing this again, ever again. So this is his thing. He's saying, we're not going to go back. And he said, we are going to stay there, and if the Muslims are strong enough, they should come and fight us. So one of the people called Akhnas ibn Shuraiq, he gets up and he's from the Bani Zuhra, and he gets up and he disputes this decision. And he says to Abu Jahl that your caravan has been saved, your wealth has been saved. Why are you jeopardizing everyone's safety by doing this? We should just go back. It doesn't make sense for us to continue just out of pride and arrogance and to show off. It doesn't make any sense. And Akhnas ibn Shuraiq, he has a position in this army, because this army consists of about 1,000 people, and the Bani Zuhra, there's about 300 fighters from their tribe in this army. So that's about a third of this army is from Banu Zuhra. And he's saying that we don't want to continue. We think this is silly. And, he appeals to Abu Jahl, but Abu Jahl tells him, no way, He says to him that, what's wrong with you? We're not going to do that. We are going to go ahead, and we are going to, we're basically going to just enjoy ourselves and show everybody that we are so strong that nobody will even think about coming close to us. And Akhnas, he speaks to his people, to his tribe, and there's 300 of them, and he tells them that, this does not make sense. We should not be fighting anymore, because, our caravan is safe, our wealth is safe, so we should save ourselves and go back. Why do you want to get into fight and have yourself killed? And so his people, they agree with him, and they get up and they start to leave. And as they are leaving, that's a third of the army of the Quraysh that's just about to default. And so Abu Jahl, he runs after them, he pleads to them, and he says to them that, basically, please don't go, and stay and fight. And Akhnas, he speaks to Abu Jahl at this point, and he says to him, have you ever known Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam to lie? And Abu Jahl says no. And he says that, do you believe that, he's telling the truth and he's the messenger of Allah? And Abu Jahl says yes. He says he has never told a lie. He is extremely honest, and I believe he is the messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But the reason they won't acknowledge him and they won't accept him is because of competition. And I mentioned this long ago in our Seerah Durus. Abu Jahl says to Akhnas, he says, because Abu Jahl is from Banu Makhzum, and of course the Prophet ﷺ is from Banu Hashim. And so Abu Jahl says that the Banu Abd Manaf and the Banu Hashim, they would give drink and food and things like that to the people of Makkah, and we would do the same thing. So he said that we were neck to neck in everything until Banu Hashim said, we've got a prophet. And he said, where are we going to get a prophet from? So he said that, this was dishonor for us, that we became lower than them, because now they have a prophet and we don't have a prophet, so they are superior to us. And this is all obviously, from Jahiliyyah, tribalism, etc. And it's all silly, really. But this is the reason, this arrogance is what is holding him back from accepting Islam. So he knows that the Prophet ﷺ is honest. He knows that he is the messenger of Allah, ﷺ, but he will not accept him like that, because his dunya position is more important to him than anything else. And so he says that, we can't back off. We have to fight these people, because, Okay, so anyway, eventually the Banu Zuhra, they accept the verdict of Ibn Shuraiq, and they all get up and leave. So now yes, and when Al-Akhnas has this conversation with Abu Jahl, he tells him that what you're saying is extremely unreasonable and it is stupid. And he doesn't accept, that this is a reason to fight just because, you want to have an upper hand, and because you can't have an upper hand, because you can never produce a Nabi from anywhere. So you're going to keep fighting with the family or the house of Abd Manaf or Abu Hashim. Okay. Banu Hashim. Now, so while this is all happening, the Muslims are still on their way to Badr. And they get news that the caravan has left. The caravan has been saved and it is not there anymore. So the caravan was saved the first time, and now the caravan's been saved the second time. So the Sahaba say, okay, well, let's go back to Medina then, because there's nothing to do if the caravan is gone. But this time they get information that there is an army from Makkah that is at such and such position, and they are waiting for them. They're waiting for these people to turn up. And the Sahaba, you can imagine morally, mentally, psychologically, they're not prepared for a fight. They came to ambush a caravan. Now all of a sudden, it seems like there's an army and there's no more caravan. So there's not going to be any booty and just a little bit of a skirmish, but it's going to be a full-blown fight. And this is something that they have not warmed up to this idea yet. They are not mentally prepared for this. And they are told that if they return to Medina without confronting this army will march all the way up to Medina, and they will come into Medina and fight with them. And so you don't want that, because they're trying to protect their women and children, right? So they don't have an option now. The caravan is gone. This army is going to wait there and wait for the Muslims to come and fight them. And if they don't, then they're going to come up to Medina and fight the Muslims. So now the only choice is for the Prophet ﷺ to take these 317 men and to go and fight the army. And they know that at this point, if they retreat, because they're very close to Badr as well, right? If they retreat and they go back to Medina, that will give the Meccans, the Quraysh, enough time to catch them back in Medina and have a fight or have a battle in Medina. So basically, they don't really have many options. They're going to be in a fight this way or that way. And so the Prophet ﷺ, he realizes that his people are divided, because there are some people, they really don't want to fight, and there are some people who are saying, okay, we should go ahead with this. And so he faces some problems. Number one, obviously, morale, from the morale aspect, they came to raid a caravan and they've ended up being in a battlefield. Their weapons are not sophisticated enough for a fight or for a battle. They just have simple tools, simple things, and that's just enough for just a small skirmish, not for a full-blown fight. And some of the Sahaba, they came with a couple of spears. Some of them bought a bow. And they've even left their horses in Medina. So they only had 2 horses. So they're really, really ill-equipped. And like some people say, that they've brought little things that they could just grab, because remember the Prophet ﷺ, he said to them that just come quickly. And For example, the Aus, there were very few of the Aus because they used to live in the southern part of Medina. The Khazraj, there were still quite a few, but the Aus were very few because they weren't able to join him. He said, whoever's ready right now, come with me. And so a lot of people were not able to join him. And the Prophet ﷺ, he was concerned that will the Ansar support him or not, because the Ansar signed a contract to support him in Medina. Now he's come out of Medina, so he's concerned that are they still going to support me? And then Miqdad, he gets up and he says these really brave words to him, and he tells him that we're not going to be like Musa alayhi salam and his people, who said to Musa alayhi salam that you go and fight, we're just going to sit here. He said that we will come with you and we will put our lives on the line for you. We will do everything that we can do for you. So the Prophet ﷺ, he's reassured and he feels, very satisfied that he has this support from his people. Now, the number of people in the Battle of Badr are 317, and people give different numbers, but it's about that much. And the number of people at the time of Ain Jalut, which is another incident, is also about 317. And so people say that it was at the time of Ain Jalut, it was the best of the believers who didn't drink from that river because they were told not to drink from the river and to carry on. So those are the best people who didn't drink from the river and they carried on. The rest of the people who drank from the river, they were left behind. And so it is said that the numbers are similar. So there was about 300 and something there, and there's about 300 and something here. So the scholars made this analogy that means that the people at Badr were the best of the people at that time. And we know that is the case, and you know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he has forgiven the people of Badr. They can do anything they like and they will not be held accountable. So there was a lot of honor for the people who were actually able to participate in Badr. Okay, now when the Prophet ﷺ draws close to the location of the army, when the Prophet ﷺ draws close to Badr, he chooses a location for the army. And he says, this is where we're going to, camp. And Habab bin Munzir, he's one of the Ansar. He says to the Prophet ﷺ, is this the place about which Allah revealed to you that we should not advance beyond or stop before this? Or is this a question or opinion of warfare tactics? So are you just parking the army here because it's a war tactic, or has Allah revealed to you about this? So the Prophet ﷺ says this is just a war tactic. So now he feels comfortable enough to give the Prophet ﷺ his suggestion, because he would feel uncomfortable to give a suggestion when this is revelation from Allah. So when he finds out this is not revelation, now he's comfortable enough to tell the Prophet ﷺ that this is not a good idea. And so he says that he suggests that the army should keep going ahead until they get to the well of Badr, and then they should stop there, and they should block off the wells beyond that so that the kuffar don't have access to water, and they should make a cistern so that they do have access to water. And obviously water is very important in the desert, so when your water runs out, basically your game's over, right? So this is a very clever tactic that he comes up with, and the Prophet ﷺ agrees with him, and he goes ahead and he does, follows the suggestion of Al-Habab. And just one last thing I want to tell you before we stop. The night before the battle starts, the Prophet ﷺ, he has a dream, and in his dream he sees that the army of the Quraysh are very few in number. And obviously that's not the reality, right? They're actually a very big army, but he sees in the dream that they're very few in number. And these are the kind of dreams that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he blesses the believers with before something so big, that is about to take place, and that is just to lift their morale. So if they were to see the real number of people who are waiting to fight with them, that might kill their morale, and it might, I think once you become psychologically defeated, you definitely become physically defeated. So to be psychologically victorious is really important in trying to win the battle, so to speak. And so this dream, it reassures him, it makes him feel brave and better and stronger. It makes him feel motivated to go and, this is an army we can tackle, we can actually fight with them. And and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Anfal, إِذْ يُرِيكَهُمُ اللَّهُ فِي مَنَامِكَ قَلِيلًا وَلَوْ أَرَاكَهُمْ كَثِيرًا لَفَشِلْتُمْ وَلَتَنَازَعْتُمْ فِي الْأَمْرِ وَلَكِنَّ اللَّهَ سَلَّمَ إِنَّهُ عَلِيمٌ بِذَاتِ الصُّدُورِ. Remember, O Muhammad, when Allah showed them to you in your dream as few, and if He had shown them to you as many, you would have lost courage and would have disputed in the matter of whether to fight, but Allah saved you from that. Indeed, Allah is knowing of that within the breasts. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us in the Quran that this dream was to lift his morale and to make him feel that he can he can go ahead and he can defend, he can fight this army. And so the dream was to strengthen them, and it happened just the night before the battle. And another interesting thing that happens is that the following morning it rains. And it was not rainy season at this time when this battle was happening, but this was a blessing and a rahmah from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Ibn Ishaq says that this rain made the valley soft and brown. The water came from the sky and it dampened the earth. But although on the Muslims' side it only dampened the earth, it did not impede their progress, but on the side of the Quraysh, it made the earth so sticky and muddy and wet that it actually impaired the movement of the Quraysh, and they were not able to proceed. They were not able to really move around because the rain had caused so much disruption. And a lot of the Muslims who were another thing that happens, there are these three things that happened: the dream that the Prophet ﷺ has, the rain, and then the sleep. So all the Sahaba, the night before the battle, they slept. They went into deep sleep and they slept very comfortably. One would expect that when they're about to meet a big army the following day, they're going to be very anxious and not able to sleep. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bestowed this sakina on them and they were able to sleep. And a lot of the Sahaba, when they slept, they had wet dreams. So when they woke up, they were in a state of janaba. And they were obviously very concerned. And the shaitan, he is always there to kill their morale, to make them feel bad about themselves. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Anfal again, إِذْ يُغَشِّيكُمُ النُّعَاسَ أَمَنَةً مِّنْهُ وَيُنَزِّلُ عَلَيْكُم مِّنَ السَّمَاءِ مَاءً ليطهركم به ويذهب عنكم رجز الشيطان وَلِيَرْبِطَ عَلَى قُلُوبِكُمْ وَيُثَبِّتَ بِهِ الْأَقْدَامِ. Remember when He overwhelmed you with drowsiness, giving security from Him, and sent down upon you from the sky rain, by which to purify you and remove from you the evil suggestions of shaitan, and to make steadfast your hearts and plant firmly thereby your feet. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us in this ayah that the sleep was sent down to them as a blessing, so that they rest and they are fresh and re-energized, And then the rain was sent to purify themselves, because they've some of them have woken up with wet dreams, and the shaitan is telling them that you're dirty, you're impure, you can't fight. And so Allah is saying that this rain which has come down, it has washed you, it has purified you, and you're clean now, you're not dirty anymore. So you don't have to listen to the shaitan and allow him to bring you down. And these are the ways that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He strengthened their hearts and He strengthened their feet. And Ali ibn Abi Talib said about the night before the battle, all of the Muslim army was asleep. This sleep was a blessing from Allah, as I mentioned in this ayah. He said each one of the soldier was in deep sleep. And so the scholars, they said that sleeping before a battle is a sign of Iman, and sleeping during Salah is a sign of Nifaq. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us from that. So with this, inshallah, we will stop here, inshallah, and we'll go into more details of the battle next time. I'm really sorry to have gone on for so long, but I hope that telling it to you like a story, you will try and remember the facts and names a bit better. And inshallah, we'll continue next time.
وآخر دعواهم أن الحمد لله رب العالمين.